This episode of Planted is brought to you by Pax Labs.
The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Planet with Sara Payan. I'm Sara Payan, your host, and today we're doing something a little different. Last month, Planted had the privilege of serving as media partner for IgniteIt in Chicago. It was my first time attending the conference, and I also had the opportunity to moderate a panel on AI and cannabis retail. I've been to conferences all over the world, and every one reflects where our industry is in that moment, and the panels are important, but if I'm being honest, they're rarely what sticks with me. It's the conversations. It's the ones that happen over coffee, walking between sessions, standing in line for lunch, the conversations after the microphones are turned off. When I got home from Chicago, I realized I couldn't stop thinking about what I heard. Companies weren't talking as much about explosive growth. The conversation had shifted to how to use it responsibly, AI responsibly, where it creates values. AI wasn't the headline anymore. People were talking about building businesses that last. We were talking about scalability, how to be into the next 10 years. And people seemed realistic about the challenges ahead, but they also seemed genuinely hopeful, which is something that I haven't been hearing for a very long time. So I found myself wondering, was I hearing the same things that everyone else was? There are two people that I knew would have an incredible perspective. Patrick and Elliot Lane spent those few days talking with leaders from every corner of the cannabis industry. They heard hundreds of conversations and saw themes in real time and left Chicago with unique perspective on where this industry is headed. So today we're not here to recap a conference, although I had an amazing time. We're here to compare notes. Joining me are Patrick Lane, CEO and co-founder of IgniteIt, and Elliot Lane, President and Chief Revenue Officer and also co-founder. Patrick, Elliot, welcome to Planted. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thanks for having us, Sarah. Really appreciate you for being there in Chicago and for making the time for us now.
Absolutely. Well, you know, I'm a Midwestern girl at heart. I'm actually originally from the Upper Peninsula, and I hadn't been to Chicago as an adult. So it was really nice to be back home in the Midwest, and it was really cool to be in Chicago, which is actually where Radio Misfits, the home of our podcast, is located. So we got to see our dear friend Ed too. And I got to say, as I love Chicago, and Chicago doesn't believe in vegetables.
Nope. Fried foods, deep dish pizza. That's really it. Right?
That's it. And I was like, I'd totally forgotten about that. Before we start,
fries is a vegetable.
What is a vegetable?
Really sure what you want. Fries are a vegetable. I'm not really sure what you're saying to me right now.
That's true. Yeah. I did actually have some really excellent fried potatoes, but they came with like a bone marrow gravy, which was really good, but Ooh. My God, Ooh. I had what is known as a fat wash bourbon while I was there too.
Uh-huh.
A fat wash bourbon.
Yep.
You had a great trip,
Sarah. I did. And now I'm eating kale.
Yeah. Sounds like the inside of my arteries is what that sounds like.
Right. So before we get into all of this, I always like to ask this question of all my guests, and you can answer this any way you like. What was your first cannabis experience?
Ooh, interesting. I'll answer this first. I think while there were experiences in college and grad school, right? And none of the good ones, right? Friends who were trying to show us, hey, this is how it's done. I say us, not Elliot and I, but my classmates and I, right? This is how it's done. They pass around an apple with a couple holes in it or a can or something, right? But no, we entered this industry over a decade ago now at Benzinga, and we approached it from a totally different lens. Right? Approached it with investors in mind, capital in mind, publicly traded companies in mind. And at that point, it seemed to me like, oh, this is cool. It's an emerging market, but it's just another investor business conference. Boy, was I wrong. I mean, the amount of change that this industry has gone through, the amount of even those executives, many of whom pitched those companies back then who are no longer leading those companies today, right? It has been a very interesting cycle to watch over the years.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see who gets attracted to it, who stays, who goes. who cuts their losses, and just kind of seeing like the evolution of investing. Because I know like back when we were looking at legalization here in California, that's when I had a lot of investor friends reaching out saying, hey, I want to buy in. What do I do? And the two things that I told them was, one, really do your due diligence, because there's a lot of people out there with promises that do not understand what they're getting into or do, and don't have the best of intentions, although there are a lot of amazing, people out there that really do need your support. And two, know that it's a long game. Like, nobody's getting rich fast. You can't, it's, if you get in early and you stay, it could reap amazing awards in the future, but that future is a long ways off. We're so nascent. So Elliot, how about you?
My first experience with cannabis was absolutely as a consumer.
Yeah.
My senior year of college was when I was introduced by an ex-girlfriend at a theater party. Was very nervous because we grew up in Kentucky. We had the DARE shirts, the DARE shirts in our drawers. But my senior year of college was definitely eye-opening. Right. Yeah. To the plant, to the community, to like the experiences of joy that it brings from there. But I don't know, professionally, my first experience was Benzinga, and I didn't really understand the legacy aspect of the industry. I just understood the consumption of it. Right. I didn't understand the business of it at that point. So for me, I was entering into this world blind, right? And it took doing exactly this. It took talking to people. It took, just listening to experiences and understanding what people needed and were looking for. And to Patrick's point, I mean, how those conversations have shifted for me over the last 8.5 years of doing this have been, I mean, I can't overstate it. They're completely different now. All that said, I think I've had different experiences along the way as a consumer and as somebody who lives in that ancillary side of the business. But it's always educational. It's always shifting, and it's always fun. People in this community are just fun.
Yeah.
So there's like 3 different experiences for you on that one.
Oh, I love that. I mean, I think that's one of the things that keep a lot of us going with this, because, I know for myself, I'm a person who gets easily bored. I'm always learning something. I'm always being proven wrong. Things are always shifting. And for those of us who thrive off of that, it's a perfect place to be. And then you guys are also, Javier Haas is part of your team, and our mutual dear friend. And I'm sure that Javi probably had a lot to add to kind of, help flesh out in the beginning, like a lot of the knowledge that you all needed to get going too.
God, yeah. Yeah. I mean, a guy like Javi, not only being that maybe our first connection to the cultural side of this space, but also a storyteller, right? Somebody who from his early days was always interested in talking to people and understanding where they were, what they cared about, where they were potentially going. And as Elliot mentioned a second ago, right, how the conversations have shifted even now as we talk about our events, we build these events, the agendas that Elliot builds, right? It's all in conversation with operators, right? And license holders and some of the top ancillary companies, right? What are you doing? What are you seeing? Where are you going? What are your problems, right? How are they getting better? How are they getting worse, right? Those conversations, a lot of that came from Javier early on, I think.
I can totally see that. And you get a lot of people in the room that don't attend other conferences. Like, you're getting a lot of leadership. I used to think that, Vegas MJ BizCon got most of the pivotal people, and they do get a lot of people, but not only do you get a lot of the leaders on the stage, you get people that don't normally come to conferences. And as I was mentioning before we started recording, one of the things I was really impressed with is when you're in the room, whether you're on the panel or you're in the audience, it's a pretty full room. Like, people do network, they do go out into the hallway, but there's also an impetus to be in on the conversations that are happening on the stage and have conversations about that. I mean, I was really impressed with how full the room is for those, because as we know, a lot of times that can be a very empty space.
Well, Elliot, I'd be curious to get your thoughts on this, but I think one of the things that has sort of set us apart, or at least given us a little bit of running room in our own sort of sphere here in cannabis events, is this idea that, yeah, I mean, 85%, 86%, I think, of our audience are C-suite, right? And that's an insane stat in and of itself.
Yeah.
But I think the majority of what I think Elliot and I have really focused on is we want to skate to where the puck is going, right? So we want to build these events around what people are actually asking us for, right? And what's happening in the news cycle. Elliot's done such a good job of that. And I don't think those rooms would be full if Elliot and team weren't thinking about what are the topics that actually matter.
Right.
And what is the education that we can provide that isn't condescending or highbrow or whatever it is, but actionable, right? How do companies leave with a real roadmap?
Well,
You
based
know?
in reality.
Yeah.
We don't run from the issues. We try to attack them head on, right? We get pitched a ton of content. Patrick and I do. I get emails all the time about, here's a panel that I pulled together for you. It's title, it's description, it's 4 panelists and backup panelists, and we don't use most of them, right? It's not to say that they're not valuable, but we take great pride in building our content, backward, in the sense that, we talk to people on the ground. And sometimes they are people on the ground. Sometimes they're participating in those conversations. And then we take that and we put that into maybe a larger umbrella topic or as a perspective within a different topic. Right. So we're always like trying to put these puzzle pieces together, and we never ignore anybody. Generally, if you reach out to me to speak at my event, you're going to talk to me. So that is my personal guarantee. But I would say when it comes to the issues that we're attacking, we also make sure that the people speaking to them are people that should be speaking to them.
Right.
Right. And I think people now trust us as event organizers, that we put together panels with respected leaders. And if for some reason that doesn't always take place, people also feel comfortable coming and telling us.
Yeah.
Right. And like, we listen to that. We take the feedback. Most of the time, 99% of the time, people are like, that was a great panel. Right. And it's because of people like you, Sara, where we had 2 conversations about, one on media, right? And your presence with the Planted podcast, but also with the work you do on AI. I was very hesitant to have a conversation on AI back in January at our Chicago event, to be clear, to be transparent with you. Because for me, it's such a, is this, what kind of panel is this going to be? Right. It's so new. It's so fresh. Right. But even over those 6 months, it developed into something more targeted and specific and niche within this industry as a conversation topic. And now we can host AI, for cultivation insights. We can host AI, continuing with like, how do we better interact with the consumer for those who would prefer more automated interactions as opposed to personalized bud tender interactions, right? So we think about all of this, not only as umbrella topics, but also in categories under that. When we try to have these conversations as applicable, I could probably talk about the agenda for the rest of the time here, FYI. But one thing I think we do better, or as well as anybody else, is we listen, right? And we lean on our partners. Our agendas are not possible without our partners helping us. We ask our partners for help.
Yeah.
I'm not here to tell you I'm an expert on Colorado or California or Ohio and Kentucky, or even capital markets. What I am here to tell you is that I'm going to bring the people who are.
Yeah.
And I think, we've earned the trust of that.
Well, I think the wise person knows what they don't know and it can identify people that help enrich it. And part of what you do is you put all that together, like you gather these people. Even when we were doing the prep for our panel, I think that the panelists and I learned so much more because we were all coming with our own perspectives and our own learnings. And so really kind of seeing like not only like the applications, but also the limitations and maybe where we don't want to go, especially when you were dealing with, a highly regulated industry. All these, so there were so many conversations that were happening even before anybody got on the stage that were incredibly enriching. And like, I know that I'm going to be keeping touch with all my fellow panelists afterwards because I really enjoyed it. But when you got on the plane to go home, there were so many conversations that week. What conversation was still on your mind?
I'll start. I think the one thing I heard across the board is this sort of, I don't know if I want to call it cautious optimism, maybe anxious optimism, right? For the rescheduling hearing, right? And what that meant. And I know we covered that across the board at the event, right? Not just in one conversation, but I think what was interesting to me is capturing that sort of zeitgeist and having people really dive in and project their own energies across that conference into those conversations. And then you see all of that spread across LinkedIn and Instagram after the event, during the event, right? It's clear to me that people are very attuned to what's happening politically, but also what that means for their own businesses, right? And that means when we do get together like this, there is a longer tail of that energy that doesn't just dissipate right away after the conference, right? And that was really cool. I love that feeling normally, but it did feel a little bit more powerful this year.
Yeah, I felt that too. I think it also really, as it starts to continue, like much more like the feelings of cannabis being a very bipartisan issue more than ever, we're feeling that, which I really appreciate. No, what were you going to say, Elliot?
I was just saying, when I look at the event, we've had events as Cannabis Capital Conference, right, where we've had keynotes get up on stage and quite literally say it can't get any worse. FYI, after that particular keynote, it got worse. But
the industry said, "Hold my beer. Let's see what happens."
Yeah. All to be said, it was refreshing, right, to see the public market conversation. The debt conversation is much more varied right now. You still have those high interest rates, but you also have banks and credit unions lending at much higher levels than previously and at lower interest rates if you're able to show a competitive credit to a non-cannabis business. So there are more opportunities for companies to refinance at the moment. And in a normal industry, equity leads, not debt. Right. But we're in cannabis. So debt is leading because equity is exhausted and waiting and on the sidelines. That said, if you listen to Boris Jordan's keynote, it was incredibly insightful how one of the top 4 or 5 operators in the country, perhaps the world, is looking at the institutional investor right now, and they are communicating with them.
Yeah.
So that, to me, even if you look at this as a bit of trickle down economics for the industry, it's going to start with those who uplist onto the US exchanges. And then perhaps it trickles down to those private MSOs and we see roll ups and all of this. Them being interested, there is bullishness in that conversation right now. And I want to add something here that I feel, I even posted about this on LinkedIn prior to the event when I was talking about capital. Capital has to stop being a dirty word for us in this space. It has to.
It's a great.
It doesn't mean that you shouldn't look at it with a highly analytical perspective and lens. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't look at it skeptically. But if we are to grow as an industry, then it's up to people like Patrick and I to put people forward that deserve that capital, right? And that are ready for that capital. But also these rooms are open to everybody. You have to have the capital conversations to understand where you are as a business. And if you aren't, it's unlikely you're going to receive the best offers of capital.
Yeah.
Or
So
any.
for me, the capital conversation you have to be having if you are expecting growth for yourself and your company. And that to me is an important takeaway for this conference going into it, during and after, is that capital, it can be intimidating. That's fine. We can be nervous about it. That's fine. But it cannot be a dirty word anymore. We cannot let the shadiness of prior investors affect how this industry grows moving forward. And I think Patrick and I want IgniteIt to be a channel where people can come and have those conversations, whether to find capital or just understand their own personal readiness for it.
Still smoking joints? Okay, we need to talk. If you love cannabis but you're still lighting it, let's look at what's actually happening. When you burn flower, you're creating smoke, and that smoke contains harmful compounds like tar, soot, benzene, and formaldehyde. In fact, almost 200 different compounds have been detected in joint smoke. So how do we know this? PAX decided to study it. In controlled lab testing, they compared joint smoke to vapor from their devices, using the same flower under the same conditions, and measured 16 key harmful compounds. The result is pretty striking. Vaporization reduced those compounds by more than 95%, because when you heat cannabis instead of burning it, you change what you inhale. You still get cannabinoids and flavor, just without all the extra stuff that comes from smoke. This isn't about judgment, it's about information. If you want to learn more, go to pax.com/science. PAX is setting higher standards so you can smoke less smoke. And for Planted listeners, get 20% off at pax.com with code PLANTED20. Yeah,
Well,
that's so important. I mean, and I think that, it can't be a dirty word, because if companies want to scale, they need investment. But with things that have happened in the past, those are learning moments. Like, that's part of the growth of a nascent industry, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Not to say we should forget about the past,
No,
but
we learn.
we won't grow as an industry without capital. We just won't.
right.
Yeah.
Sorry, Patrick, if you were about to say something.
No, I was just going to say the due diligence process, right? You mentioned that earlier, Sarah, and it goes hand in hand with what Elliot's talking about, right? Whether you want investment to grow and scale your own business, right? Whether you're trying to bootstrap it and scale it yourself, and you have to be a good steward of your own capital, or whether you're ready, like some of these businesses are, to exit and undergo some kind of M&A, that due diligence is largely the same, right? There's going to be that sort of opening of the kimono and the uncomfortable conversations if perhaps you haven't been a good steward of your own capital, right? Either way, as Elliot put it, it can't be a dirty word. The industry also needs to embrace that sort of growing up, that natural maturation of every industry, right? And I think we're getting there, honestly, right? Especially with companies like Trulieve and Glasshouse going to NYSE and others that will follow suit and go to NYSE or NASDAQ, right? There's a real sort of grown-up attitude, right? Or maybe we should call it an adolescent attitude.
I
right?
like that.
For some of the companies in this industry. And I think it bodes well for everyone.
Yeah, I think it does too. I mean, I always when I talk about the industry, I always remind people, how nascent we are. We like to, I was talking to somebody from New Zealand yesterday, and I was like, what would you like to see in 20 years? And he's like, well, cannabis is like dog years. I'm like, so what would you like to see in 200 years? Because so much happens in such a short amount of time. But it's, it's coming from like an org psych background. We always talk about like organizational change. They call it like storming, norming, and reforming. And I feel like we're kind of like on the cusp of we're from storming to norming. And I used to think that it was a few years ago that we were on the cusp. Maybe it's really long. It's kind of like the rings of like Saturn. It's like you're kind of getting into the territory. But, it's definitely, we're starting to see that, because there's that whole roots versus suits thing. And I always say, hey, we need both. We just need everybody to like have the same heart and, ethos. Like, we need all of the skills of the industry, all of the legacy, the history, and all of that, and the knowledge. But we also need all of those skills that people are coming in with from other industries, all those talents to be able to have this be something that's grown up. Because when I started in the 215 days, as much as cozy as it was, although worrying about getting raided by the feds isn't really a cozy feeling, but the whole thing with like the farmers coming in with their bags of flour and, doing that, and really it being kind of more of a cottage industry, for lack of a better word, was a beautiful time. But in order for something to grow, and also for, public health and all these other things, we do need to grow.
And I think that's where we see the value, especially of our state level events, is we are not trying to forget the people who have cultivated the knowledge of genetics and strains and then the plant.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, the businesses need to be built upon the backs of those people, and those people need to benefit. We need the legacy institutional knowledge in this space, or we need to recognize medical patients and veterans in this space. We wouldn't be here without them.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that going deeper into the markets allows us to provide, not just offering high level capital markets discussions or fun AI updates, that dive in super deep into technology innovation, right? But we get to go into how are people growing in Colorado, craft versus, maybe a company who owns 20% of the market. How
Right.
are, that market, that's our next event, is the first to legalize adult use, right? So
Right.
do they have a lens before anybody else as to the next chapter of what it looks like, maybe post price compression? Wouldn't that be nice?
Oh,
We
yeah.
want people to understand that the industry is going to adjust. It will leave some people behind who are not adjusting with it, but it's not to say that we have to forget at all, where we come from, who got us to where we are. We just want to make sure those people also have the same access that Trulieve, Curaleaf, Verano, Cresco, and all of them do, because they are a part of this conversation just as much, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. Agreed. I mean, it's, I think that the conversations that happen, actually, for those who have the stomach for it, can help them make the shift, because there is a certain nimbleness that we have to have right now to survive. I know, like, when I was still working for a plant touching company, I was lucky enough to work for a group that was looking to the future. So we were making a lot of changes with how we behaved compliantly well before we were supposed to. And there were growing pains. That was not fun, but it's also what helped us survive and end up being purchased by a multi-state operator. Like, my old CEO, I always joke with him that he's like urban legend. I'm like, you got out and you made money. How about that? Like, that's
Oh,
pretty cool.
remember when that used to happen?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
now we dream about
Urban
it.
legend.
You know, so in Chicago, did either of you leave with a different perspective from when the conference started?
You know what was interesting, and for your listeners, but also just for Elliot and I to enjoy this, right? This was our first big one on our own with IgniteIt, right? Outside of the old Benzinga infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
Never before has every detail mattered to us the way it did this time. Never before. I mean, we've always gone out of our way to help people. We've always gone out of, and we always will. But making sure that people understand that IgniteIt is here. IgniteIt is the future, right? When it comes to these cannabis events and where real deals get done. The amount of people who've been reaching out, by the way, and said, "Hey, I'm getting deals done. You guys made the exhibit hall so much better. It's awesome. I got deals done on the floor and in the VIP lounge and at dinner." And that's the kind of thing that makes us so gratified at the end of this, right? Because it helps us understand there's real impact here. It's not just event promoters putting something on because they want to and for a buck. It's, hey, we're providing a platform, for people to do business and to further themselves. So I guess that's the feeling that I left with.
Yeah, operationally coming out of that, the intentionality that I feel we, I mean, we launched a lot of new activations at this
Mhm.
event. Sarah, I think you were on the exhibit hall floor to see some of those.
They're very
The
cool.
media stage
Yeah.
was new with Beard Bros. Um, and a few of our company partners interviewing people there. The espresso bar I visited many times. It was great.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, caffeine
yeah,
is key.
yeah, but also partners doing more on the floor too. We were able to showcase tribal cannabis operators and brands through ICIA. We, were able to have our buddy Bo Keys, who runs the Ohio Classic events or the Classic events golf series across the country. Do some golf activation on the floor. Networking to me, an exhibit floor is not for everybody. However, what it offers is the opportunity for you to participate in the experience and stick out. And I think our partners helped us with that this
Yeah.
year in a way that I don't know that they were always excited to at Benzinga. And I think for us, we want to continue to grow that. There's some things that didn't work, and we'll look introspectively at that and be like, can we adjust this to make this more directly valuable, or is this something that we should make room for something else for,
Yeah.
right? Events are growing, events are evolving, they're breathing. Our Chicago event should not look the same, the Capitol Conference should not look the same in 3 years, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I look at events. I get excited to say, hey, look at this space, how can we mold it to what our audience expects, because our audience is full of people who network differently too. And nobody networks the same. Nobody goes to the exhibit hall at the same time for the same reasons. Some people are very strategic in their schedules and they have it fully planned out. That's what the app is for, to set some meetings. Some people just want to go to a casual networking spot, like the Chandelier Bar, like our espresso bar, right? Some people want different ways to meet people. And I think it's up to us as event providers to figure out how to make those handshakes happen.
Yeah,
Yep.
I really enjoyed the opportunities to do that. Like I'm on the board for the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce for NorCal, and of course our mutual friend Ian Rassman, who I lovingly refer to as the mayor.
Beautifully done. Love Ian Rassman.
Love that guy.
Ian's awesome, but it was really nice to like see the chamber getting together, especially because it's something that's growing more, and everybody connecting and having more conversations. Also really nice to see people that normally I just see on a Zoom screen in real life. There's nothing quite like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always nice.
I,
And
if,
go ahead.
I should say events, that's exactly what it's for. The amount of conversations that can move things quicker in 2.5 days is substantial to video meetings, to emails, to your standard work process. Please go to a local event that fits your category. If you're a wholesale, go to one of these, Flower Expo, Hall of Flowers, Revelry, right? If you're looking for just a meetup, go to one of the chamber events. But you will see that in-person connection, there is nothing digital that replaces that.
Yeah, that's it. Was there at this event, was there someone you met who challenged the way that you think?
Challenge the way that I think.
I'm always like, I always love, like, because it's like as human beings, we always think we have all the info, and that, it's like, I'm right on this. And whenever somebody like brings something up and I'm like, whoa, I never thought about it that way, and being that the two of you come across people who are leaders in all of the different areas of cannabis, whether it's plant touching or ancillary, I always wonder, like, and I also understand that you're also busy making sure that everything is running the way it's supposed to be too.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think it's always interesting to me. I guess I'll take your question and I'll sort of expound upon it.
Yeah.
Right. There's always conversations that pop up that I enjoy especially when there are either differences of opinion amongst the panelists, um, or somebody speaking on the stage who is challenging a certain point of view, right? I love that. One, it's great content, and two, it sucks all of us in because you don't always expect that. Sometimes you go to these discussions and it's like, okay, everybody's agreeing with each other. Where are the war stories? Where are the scars, the tears, right? The things that people have actually experienced that made them who they are, themselves and their companies, right? I thought that, the debate that you crafted, Elliot, to kick off the conference was very unique and interesting. I thought that Lieutenant Governor Stratton in her panel was awesome, right?
Yeah.
And the state of Illinois, especially the officials, have certainly gotten their fair share of boo birds over the years, right? With how things have been rolled out. But speaking as the person who's likely to become the next senator from Illinois, I thought was very interesting to see that on stage and see how she said, hey, we've done this, this, and this, but we're not done. This wasn't done correctly. There was some acknowledgement of that. And also, this is what needs to happen at the federal level immediately, So I don't know. Everybody talks a big game, but I would say that particular session, and then, of course, that hemp cannabis debate was I think, very, very cool.
Those are all essential conversations, and I'm really excited that it's quite possible that she's going to be in the Senate because it's I've had several of the chairs of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus on the show, and I really think that having somebody who has real experience with what's going on at the state level can really help with the federal level, because it's when we look at taxation at a federal level, and we're already being overtaxed in many states,
Mm.
um, that's so detrimental. I had the former head of the RNC, Michael Steele, on the other year, and
Oh,
we
cool.
have he's a lovely guy, and we have some differences in opinion about some things with politics, but the one thing that we totally agree on is that everything is overtaxed, and it's like,
Oh,
we have a lot of work to do with that. So to have somebody from the state level to be able to actually have access at a federal level would just be something.
that would be nice.
Yeah. So one thing I kept hearing was that operators were much more focused on durability than rapid growth. Businesses weren't asking how fast we can scale, but they were more asking, how do we build something that lasts? Was that your read too, or what were you getting out of those conversations?
It's not only our read, it's what we're trying to instill into him as well. Um, we want people to operate as the best businesses possible in this industry. I think we had a panel discussion that looked to hit on just that. It's a little on the nose, but intentionally so.
Yeah.
Whereas basically said this industry needs better companies. We need companies that pay their invoices, but we need companies that offer more reliable innovation and technology and supply chain management and cash management and inventory management. All of these topics, there are some businesses that master them. They don't need necessarily to look at some of these things. But then we look at buying practices, and I hear from brands how they're approaching it sometimes is pretty common sense, but the data they're providing their retailers could actually help them make more money in the long run. So it's expediting those conversations, expediting the use of resources and data and technology, and cutting back and making sure you're not overspending
Yeah.
at the end of the day, making sure you have control of your finances. But to run a good business, you have to have, reliable people on your side and reliable resources in your toolkit to set the groundwork for financial. And for us, and for me in particular, when I look especially at our state level events, that's the type of content we want to provide.
Yeah.
How can we get content that directly affects strategies to get more cash in your books? And for us, yes, capital has been, a garbage can for a few years, but at the same time, we're a company that wants to help you with your financial health. And that's
Well,
not just raising money, it's saving money, it's better use of capital, it's control over your capital. And I think all of that plays into exactly what you're saying.
what's interesting too is the other maybe dirty word, consolidation, right? I mean, there's so much of that we've talked about over the years, especially recently. Like, every industry, every emerging market goes through, people called it what? The green rush, the gold rush. Everybody and their mother was opening a dispensary or some kind of new license, right? And the states gave out way too many licenses, right? And we've seen that across the board in most cases. Consolidation is a normal thing, right? And it is being a good steward of capital, as Elliot was just talking about. It's making sure your business is prepared for the future. And some of that preparation might come in the form of consolidation, might come in the form of downsizing, right? There are still states around the US where there are stores closing every week, right? And that's a statistic that might be scary for some, but it's natural, right? And I think those that are positioned well, those that are ready to build for the future are the ones that probably got value out of a session like the one you mentioned, Sarah, right? And walking away from a conference like this saying, yeah, it is a marathon. It isn't a sprint right now just to see how much money I can make before I get out. I'm either in it to win it and I'm going to stick it out, or I'm probably not going to make it,
Well, and I'll add one more thing to that is, we've hosted the content. We try not to be that doom and gloom as I was talking about a little bit ago. But at the end of the day, if you are in danger of losing your business, content and education and collaboration can help you walk away with something, right? So there is opportunity to not lose everything, but there's opportunity to be more strategic and downsize. There's opportunity. You see the MSOs, many have downsized, certain states, sold off certain markets because they just couldn't work with them, right? But that is, even on a smaller scale, sometimes necessary, but also it's just how, sometimes people need to not walk away with nothing from this industry. And I think there are opportunities and resources that people need to explore and just be aware of for that discussion.
Yeah, and I think that,
a personal expert, but yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think also, like, as much as people are bringing their skills and talents to this arena, which is incredibly important, I think that there's some nuance around, like, even when we were talking about, can AI sell weed? It's like, well, there are lots of things that AI can be used as a tool for, but the thing that we need to not forget, and I think sometimes people who come from traditional CPG do forget, is that it's not a formula retail situation. It's, if you want to capture consumers and have them stay, it's not a race to the top with THC or a race to the bottom with sales. It's about differentiation and how you're becoming a trusted source for them, because cannabis is such a personal, dare I say, emotional thing for people. Even people who may not realize that it's emotional, they certainly have feels when they go to their favorite dispensary and the product that's helping them sleep is no longer available. But really kind of talking about just the humanness of, yes, we have business, we have things in place, we have technology, but because this is a substance that creates a reaction in the body, it's also a very human feeling thing. And so if we take that out of the equation, well, then you're just another place that, sells cannabis. And if you have a good sale, you might get a run of people coming in, but they're not going to keep coming back. What are they coming back for?
Are you looking for a lasting, meaningful way to connect with your audience and highlight your brand? Well, listen up, because Planted with Sara Payan is taking on new sponsors. Here's a powerful stat. 20% of listeners are more likely to support brands they hear about on a trusted podcast. And 60% actually look up that product after hearing about it. That's the power of podcasting. Planted with Sara Payan has a unique draw. With remarkable guests, we attract and engage audience that spans all sides of the cannabis spectrum. Picture your message reaching these listeners time and again. Podcast ads are evergreen, meaning your brand stays relevant as new audiences discover and binge past episodes. It's a long-term investment that keeps on giving. If you're looking for a targeted, passionate audience with lasting impact, the right listeners are here waiting to meet your brand. Visit plantedwithsara.com to get a copy of our sponsorship deck today.
I hope you don't mind me sort of shifting gears for a second, Sara.
Not at all.
I think that's also why, not to put too fine a point on it, right? But, being out of the Benzinga infrastructure, right? Having been bought by private equity, having been a financial media sort of up and comer and also a juggernaut for a while, right? I think that's why the industry continues to embrace IgniteIt now that we're outside of that. It's because the human aspect that Elliot and I as family bring to IgniteIt, right? And putting on these events and connecting. I mean, a lot of these people like you who come to these events are our friends, right? And our network. And we've cultivated that over a long time, over a decade. But, I think the best part about interacting with all of you folks on site and watching you indulge in these panels and these topics and walk away energized and talking about it. The best part of it is knowing that our friends will be better off, right? Our connections, our network will continue to grow in a healthy way, right? So, yeah, I mean, it's, Elliot and I might not come from the legacy aspect of this industry, but I almost feel more connected to it now than I ever have.
And if we aren't friends, we want to be.
Right.
We want to be.
Well, I think it's such an important part of it because we learn from each other. I had so many great conversations during the conference and after hours with people where you just catch a moment with somebody and either you have a question for them because you know about some of the experience that they have, or I had a lot of people having questions for me, like saying, hey, I want to get on stage more, with media, like how do I create a media presence and different things like that. And being able to just have a quiet moment to give somebody a little bit of feedback and some things to think about, or receiving that myself, it's a really amazing gift to be able to have that, especially because at the risk of sounding hippy dippy, it's always so nice to see people even virtually, because how long ago were we not able to do that all? It was just a phone call. But there's something about that in-person, energetic, exchange where you're like in the here and now with that person there right in front of you that just is not, you can't replicate that through a conversation over a laptop.
Definitely not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, although I am enjoying this conversation over a laptop with you right now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but and it was so nice to see you in person too. It's like there's something about that, especially when you have established that energetic connection and then you go back to the laptop, you're like, oh, hey, you, I know you, let's talk, and I really love that. And actually kind of getting into leadership in the human side, I've always believed that cannabis at its core is a relationship business. Technologies change, regulations change, markets change, but people are what move the industry forward. Patrick, what's something that's changed your mind about, that you've changed your mind about as a leader over the past few years?
In relation to the industry or just in general?
It can either way. It's an open question.
You know what I think? It's always been interesting growing into first sales and then sales and operations and then, overall leadership roles, right? What I think what I've grown in over the years is my own desire to continue relationships, keep up with those people that I met early on in my career, continue to ask, what can I do for you? Right. Sometimes we all get so busy in our careers and in the day-to-day that we forget that if we're not actually helping someone else in some way, right? A client, a partner, a potential connector of people, right? If we're not seeking to help someone else, then we won't succeed, right? Our businesses eventually won't be able to grow because there won't be impact. There won't be that sort of chain of connection that was made, right? So yeah, sometimes it's so hard to pick your head up out of the trees to see the forest, or whatever that saying is. But I think even over the last year, right? Elliot and I will celebrate in 22 days being a year old as IgniteIt, right?
Congratulations. That's awesome.
And yeah, but what's interesting to me is just the amount of connecting we do on a daily basis still, right? So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's certainly what comes to mind for me.
I love that. Elliot, what's something that you've changed your mind about as where it comes to partnerships and growth?
You know, the imposter syndrome is calming down a little bit, I guess.
We've all got it.
Because I've never been an executive outside of Benzinga and IgniteIt, right? So this is all every part of this is a learning experience, and I think that's also the fun part for me. If you're an executive and you're a rinse and repeat, you're bored. I don't want to be you. I think the fun thing about being a leader is you're not only in the relationships Patrick's talking about, taking meetings all day in the day-to-day, but you're also innovating, and you get to be a part of what's next for what you're building. So that's really fun, but also understanding that we all have strengths, right? Being comfortable with mine, understanding Patrick has different strengths. And luckily we complement each other very well in that. I think if he disagrees, he can.
I'm glad he
say it here. Yeah, sorry. That's karma, I guess. But I think I think being a leader in cannabis is unique to being a leader anywhere else as well. So maybe that's not a change, but a realization. Is this will always be community driven. This will always be people driven. And if you're not driving it as sending value out first, then your business will not survive in this industry. So you need to lead with value. And to be frank, I think that's the biggest shift when we went to IgniteIt is why are we doing this? We're doing this to bring value, to bring capital, to bring education to license holders, plant touching executives, and those working within the industry. And that shift in our thought process, I think, what was the most valuable change for me from Benzinga to IgniteIt, and one that I think has served us very well in the first 11 months and 9 days or whatever it is.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's so different when you're building something on your own terms, like something brand new. It changes everything. So going back to the industry a little bit, I've just got a couple quick questions. What do you think is healthier than most people realize?
I think there's a lot more winners out there than people realize. I think there's a lot of companies doing well that are not loud about it. I think that's been the case for a couple of years, to be quite honest. But those companies, I think, are starting to come out of the woodwork a little more because I think there is an opportunity now for them to participate in the growth of the market, of the industry. So I think the idea that everybody is not doing well, I don't think is a correct one. But I do think, I'm not talking about percentages. I'm not talking about more people are doing better than not doing good, right? I'm just saying that I don't think we talk a lot about people doing well. And I think there are a lot of success stories in this industry that we just don't mention.
Yeah. I mean, we tend to be kind of doom and gloom, the sky is falling, like painting it with a pretty wide brush after, I think, I don't know, maybe it's just the years and years of everything that's happened. Well, on the other side, what do you think is more fragile than people realize?
That's a really
I
good question.
I think approach to regulation should be a focus for everybody, and it not
Yeah.
always is.
Yeah.
Regulation and compliance. I think if you are not preparing yourself for whatever the tax structure may be post 280E
Yeah.
and prepared for every option, um, that may be an unfortunate realization because I don't think anybody does know what that is directly. Um, yeah, that's one thing.
Yeah. The connection to the political sphere, right? And those who are handing down that regulation, making that regulation a reality now. Um, I think that might be stronger than ever, right? In terms of how many conversations are happening, the accessibility uh, of some of these politicians and their willingness to come on record that they support, change at the federal level. Maybe where the fragility comes to play in my mind is there are still these things that are popping up every once in a while where perhaps one bad actor in the news, right, can I don't want to say derail, but let's say make it more difficult for those politicians to stand firm in their publicly held stance on federal reform, right? And that's another reason why some of these folks who've come out recently and said, "Hey, one industry, one voice." I know we all don't have to be united on every aspect of regulation and change, um, but we do need to be good actors at this point, right? We all need to be moving forward in the right way, um, so that the news cycle doesn't shift and make it more difficult for the right change to happen.
Yeah. I think I see a lot more of that in leadership these days. Like, I have a lot of conversations with our colleagues that are in leadership about the fact that it's not so much about competition, it's about collaboration.
Mm.
Because, I always talk about when we are looking at hemp or cannabis, it's the same plant. And if from the get go we had worked together, the amount of power that we would have, the sheer lobbying power, would take your breath away. But we've kind of gotten caught up in the mire of the doom and gloom and the painting of with the wide brush, which I think causes people to panic and kind of silo themselves. Whereas I think now more than ever, we need to be working together, having conversations. And yes, we may not agree on everything, but there are definitely things that we can align on to push forward better policy. I mean, hemp needs to be a little bit more regulated. Cannabis needs to be less. And we can look to things like what's going on in Minnesota with beverages, cannabis or THC beverages, I'll say, being available at bars and restaurants. And it's a show that, hey, we can successfully live in the normie world with, some guardrails, just like we have with alcohol and tobacco.
The normie world, I love that.
You
I
know,
love that. Yeah.
or the civilians, whichever you
The
prefer.
muggle, the
Muggles.
muggles.
Yeah, we both went the same place there.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that it's a call for us to really, work together, because in the end, it's like that saying, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're definitely on the menu. And we're seeing a lot of challenges with the bifurcation of cannabis and hemp. And I just don't, I think that the separation causes more harm than good.
Hmm.
Agreed.
Fully agreed. There has to be compromise on many sides of many issues.
Yeah.
And I think some will be forced to compromise. But I
Yeah.
also think there's a way to stay up to date on how things are moving. So, or there are ways, I should say. Channels like Planted with Sara Pan is a great podcast for people to check out.
Oh, well,
So
thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. So I want to get into something that's it's definitely still, business focused, but it's more about talking about the two of you as brothers and co-founders. Because as a sibling, I know, like, that can go either way. Like, your brothers first, partners second. Building a company together has to teach you things about each other that growing up never could. Patrick, what's something that you've come to appreciate about Elliot that you didn't fully appreciate before you started
Oh,
IgniteIt?
wow. You're going to make me say nice things?
I
This is amazing. Look at his face too. It's funny. I tell everybody mom made me hire him, but that's not true. I think
You're going to pay for that at Thanksgiving.
I always do. What I would say is this, we have an older brother too, and we're all very close. But Elliot and I are best friends, right? We talk multiple times every day. Sometimes it's just a quick, hey, X, Y, and Z, we got to do this, blah, 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 blah. And it's cutting through the noise and just getting stuff done together. There is no one I trust more. I know between the two of us, because we care so much, right? Everything's going to get done. Everything is going to happen the way it should. And I don't have to worry. I don't worry about the agenda having a bad topic. I don't worry about a partner not being in the right spot, right? And it also makes me more accountable too. I also feel like, Elliot's doing a great job. I'm going to make sure this event is pristine to make sure that all the hard work that he puts into it is actualized, right? And realized in every aspect that I can control, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, what have I realized about him? I would say his work ethic continues to surprise me. The commitment to the task at hand and making sure that leading with compassion, right? When it comes to how we build these events, how we work with our partners, what we're instilling in our teammates that we've brought on since we've started. It's a great way to do business, right? Having somebody you trust fully and who knows what they're doing and also has the right intentions,
Yeah, I love that. All right,
He's
Elliot,
okay.
Your turn.
Well, thank you. I'll say this. I'm maybe not as eloquent, but I'll start with I learned everything from Patrick. The industry, what an MSO is and an SSO. Patrick started our podcast that I took over, right? So, I mean, it all started with Patrick and Jason starting the events and me building within the frame that they had already built. So, I think I credit a lot of what I'm able to do to Patrick. But I think since we started IgniteIt, Patrick has had to wear hats he's never worn before. Logistics, marketing, contract negotiation, employment, taxes. He's chief HR officer, chief operations officer, chief marketing officer. But it goes back to us. IgniteIt is family, right? IgniteIt is our fourth sibling. And there's just a general refusal to make it happen, if that makes sense. And I think that starts with Patrick. The sheer willpower that he has is unmatched. But at the end of the day, I don't have that skill set. So the business skill set that Patrick has, I lean on him to have those conversations. And I'm thrilled that he's our CEO. That is not a position I aspire to. It is not something
Are you sure you don't want it? You don't want it?
Also, I'm 1,000% sure. Enjoy that seat. But also I will say, Patrick's thinking about what else can we do. We're both bogged down and I'm like heads down and everything. And then all of a sudden Patrick's talking about fresh opportunities for us too. So, the desire to innovate, the desire to grow, the ability to take on new jobs that he's never done before. It's massively impressive. So I think that's a direct answer to your question, and it's not blowing smoke because those.
This episode is brought to you by Fat Nugs Magazine, a global perspective of cannabis and stoner culture as a bridge to the rest of the world. Right now, you can join Fat Nugs Magazine, Beard Bros Farms, Freedom Grow, and Jailed for Weed in the upcoming Prisoners Edition and help spotlight current and past cannabis prisoners and their stories, because no one should be in jail for a plant. Find Fat Nugs Magazine's beautiful print copies at your local dispensary, fatnugsmag.com, and on socials. Cannabis culture welcomes us all.
Sets that do not have.
Well, I mean, it's a good combination. You complement each other very well. Who's more stubborn?
Him,
Who usually
for sure.
who usually gets the final word?
Mix.
Nah, yeah, Patrick. No, if Patrick wants the final word, Patrick gets the final word. Is what I'll say there.
As the eldest, I understand this.
This is why I get it.
I hear that. I hear that. And so for those of you listening, IgniteIt has several conferences throughout the year. Chicago is a really big one, but there are more coming up. You want to let everybody know what else is coming up and how they can get involved?
Gladly. So there's 3 styles of event we run. The market spotlight, that's that individual market focused conference that we run. It's quick, it's one day in and out. And we've hosted many of those over the last several years. We've got 2 coming up, September 18th in Denver, Colorado, right? Just one day in Denver. And then October 7th in LA, Los Angeles, California, October 7th. The second style is this Cannabis Capital and Policy Summit. This is Elliot's baby. He convinced me to run this, and I'm so glad we did. This is in DC on November 18th. It is right after the midterm elections. I believe it's right after a pretty important deadline for a lot of cannabis companies coming up, right? So it is very well timed, and there will be lots of conversation. That's the event last year where we had a couple of Republican congressmen. We had Senator Cory Booker come, amongst all of the major executives in the industry, right? And investors, I should say. And then after that, if we're already talking about 2027, we're taking our Cannabis Capital Conference, taking our talents to Miami. Back to Miami we go.
Right on.
Not to use the LeBron James thing too liberally, but it's March 25th and 26th at the Diplomat. That's where we were the last time we were in Miami. And we are so excited to be coming back.
That's wonderful. Okay, I'm going to leave you both with one final question. If we sat together 1 year from today, what's one conversation that you hope the cannabis industry is finally having that we're not having enough of today? I know I've been throwing them at you today, guys. Sorry about that.
No, but these are good questions. I think the obvious one that we talked about a little bit already, so I won't belabor it, is I hope a year from now, some of the tax problems are solved, right? Or at least on their way to being solved, and that we can talk about real equity looking at the space again, right? I was talking to an MSO executive at dinner in Chicago, and what she said to me was, it might be 12 months, might be 18 months before some of that capital really starts to come back in. But those conversations are happening. There are banks, big banks like Goldman Sachs and others that are being approached to cover the space now, right? So I would hope that there's a lot more capital focused conversations a year from now.
I am excited for the U.S. cannabis market to be seen as what it should be seen. In the next few years, we get a lot of people pitching us to have more international content at our event, and this is where I get stubborn about it, because I feel like there are a lot of obstacles and issues we need to cover as a U.S.-based cannabis event for U.S.-based cannabis companies, outside of international updates. The opportunity is there. I encourage people to look into it and talk to people who are affluent in what's happening overseas. But the U.S. is known for our consumerism. The U.S. is known for the opportunity. And I am really excited for people internationally to be coming here, right? For the conversation to be about how can people interact with the U.S. market, and not how can people in the U.S. find more business outside of it, right? Doesn't mean that people shouldn't be looking at this as a global opportunity, but the U.S. market, I think, doesn't get enough love in that conversation right now. And I'm ready for it too again.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah, with the international market, it seems like the biggest thing I keep hearing these days is it's pretty universal price compression. You know, we're going through our growing pains.
Mhm.
I'm really excited to see what happens. I'm really excited in a year from now. Oh, I'm sure I'll talk to you before that. But to have a recap and kind of see like what we talked about today and what we're
Ooh,
talking
that would be
about then,
cool.
right? Let's make a date
That'd be
to do
fun.
it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And for people who want to follow you on social media, get tickets for the events, learn more about what you're doing, and for those of you listening, it's not just a conference. They have a lot of great media that comes out throughout the year. How do they do that?
Yeah, the website is IgniteIt.com. IgniteIt.com. Instagram is IgniteIt News. Oh yeah, just like Elliot's hat there. IgniteIt News. We have a couple of different pages on LinkedIn. We've got IgniteIt, IgniteIt Cannabis, IgniteIt Cannabis Capital Conference. Some of them will have more editorial, news-based posts. Some of them will have more conference-specific media. But yeah, there's quite a few ways that we're active, right? And also sign up. We put out a newsletter every Thursday. Our editorial team puts that together. We'll put updates in there for what events are coming up and what's happening in our neck of the woods. But if you go to IgniteIt.com, you can sign up there.
Awesome. One of the things I appreciated the most at my first Ignite It was finally being reminded that progress in cannabis still happens the way it always has, through conversation, relationships, and people who are willing to listen as much as they speak. So thank you for creating these spaces where these conversations can happen, where you're attracting, some of the voices and ears that we need to have connecting to one another. And also for hanging out with me today and sharing your perspective. I've had a great time with you. I've been looking forward to this, and I'm looking forward to us talking some more in the future.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
Super soon, Sarah, for us. Appreciate you. And thanks
Yes.
to everybody who listened to us.
And if you're listening in and you're in the industry, if you're listening in, you're in the industry and you want to connect with, either if you're an investor or you want to connect with investors, you want to talk to people who are really making change in the industry, please attend this conference. It's incredibly important. It's very impactful, and you'll see something that will surprise you. It's a little bit out of the ordinary, a little bit different. Thanks for listening, everyone. And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend. Let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Payan on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher. Tune in. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.